Dog Films presents Paid to Dream with Charles Dennis.
A few weeks ago, it's a kind of crazy woman. Not like you. That laugh, I've never forgotten.
Oh,
And this one?
I am crazy about this. It reminds me of my old boss from KGB.
Dmitri?
No, Ivan, the not so terrible.
Can I get you another vodka?
The more I drink, the more the price goes up, huh?
Yeah.
Why not? I've done very well for myself in America.
Have you two met?
I would remember such a strapping man, Mr.
Cobalt. With a K.
Madame Filipova is an old acquaintance of mine.
Friendly Viro. Call me Katja.
Yeah. Do you know? Oh, by the way, folks, it is Charles Dennis. This is Paid to Dream. I almost said Breaking Bad, but that's because you were talking about Mr. Cranston. This is Paid to Dream. And that man over there is Michael Lindsay-Hogg. And it's hard to believe the only acting credits he has on IMDb are two for me. Charles Foley. He was also the best man at my wedding to Ulrika. So if he didn't hold a special place in my heart already, he does.
And you for me. So don't evade that either.
No, it's the bromance of the 2 centuries. We have spilled over now.
Yeah.
Do you remember how we first met?
Yes, I do. It was in Jean Marsh's apartment in Hollywood when she was, I think, playing down at the Amundsen or one of those theaters there.
At the Mark Taper.
Mark Taper, The Importance of Being Earnest and Travesties.
Right.
And somehow you got my name and number, which someone had probably scrawled in the bathroom wall. And you came over one day and said, I have a script. And I was in those days practicing being very butch and drinking a beer at about 11 o'clock in the morning. And there you sat and you talked to me about the script you'd written about based on Volpone, no, based on not on Volpone, based on something by
Johnson,
Ben Jonson, The Alchemist of Cecil Street. And we were going to do that. I mean, that's a longer story, but you came over and you were this kid, which I guess you still are to me, and you were lively and very intelligent for someone who was so young, and smart, fun. You didn't want a beer. And I immediately thought, oh, this guy is worth something. And you still are. Don't cry. Don't cry.
I know. Don't cry, little yellow bird. Well, I want to, because this show of mine jumps around like my head. This book.
Yeah.
It's a couple of years old now, and it is called Luck and Circumstance. I urge everyone, get this book, but what's amazing about it, it's Michael's memoir, but it is, to my knowledge, the only memoir that is also a mystery. I don't think there's any other book like that where you're going, well, are we going to find out? Is he going to tell us? And even you don't find out.
Almost. I mean,
Yeah, well, tell us a little about the mystery.
By the way, the book is now out in paperback. If anybody wants to save $10. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, I don't mind talking about it. I don't mind talking about it to you. My mother, Geraldine Fitzgerald, was an actress in Hollywood. Well, she's Irish, but she ended up in Hollywood when she was in her 20s. After having briefly worked in the New York theater at the Mercury, which was then run by John Houseman and Orson Welles. Orson Welles was the leading actor as well as the producer. And they were together in Heartbreak House, the Shaw play, with him playing Shotover and my mother playing Ellie Dunn. Um, okay, then we move forward. I'm a young actor, a teenage actor in New York, and which is where, with my mother's second marriage, we moved from California, and I've decided that the name Michael Lindsay-Hogg is not a good name for an actor. It's people can't pronounce it, and I'd also worked at that time as an extra with one line in Philco Playhouse, one of those old TV series, with a really good young actor called Jeffrey Horn, who was in Bridge in the River Kwai. And then I bumped into Jeff not that long after in a casting director's office, and he went up to the secretary and say, "Oh, hi, my name's Jeff Horn," which is a smart thing to do because that was his name. So then I go up to the secretary and say, "Hi, my name is Michael Lindsay-Hogg," and she says, "How do you spell that?" And she said, do you pronounce it like hog, like pig, or is it Hogue? Okay, so I decided Lindsay-Hogg is not a good name for an actor. So I'm up in my room trying to think about another name. Okay, now first of all, I think of Michael Sokolov, because I'd been brought up partly by the great Russian actor Vladimir Sokolov. Then I thought people might think I was Russian, and I didn't think I could carry that off. So then my mother was in Orson Welles' production of King Lear in New York the year before, and I'd met him when I was 15. He was very nice and welcoming. And I wrote down, I thought, Michael Wells. And so I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I thought, yeah, and I practiced it as an autograph. Because as you know, it's important to give autographs to people like you do, and I might be asked to. So then I went down, it's about 10 o'clock at night, and I'd finished my school homework. And my mother was sitting down having a nightcap. And I said, I think I've got a good name for my new acting name. And she said, oh, yeah, what's that? And I said, Michael Wells. And she said, Michael Wells, And she made a gesture with her mouth, a kind of which was a sign that something didn't sit right with her. And so then she said, I never mentioned it before, but I didn't think it was important. But some people think at the Mercury Theater that Orson and I had a romance. I said, oh, really? I didn't know that. And she said, yeah, and some people think that he's your father. What? And so that's where it started. I then, the next night, going upstairs saying, what? I talked to her a little bit more about it. And she talked about the nature of their relationship and that they were going to elope at one point. She said she used the word elope, which is a funny word since they both were married. My mother to my Edward Lindsay-Hogg and Orson to Virginia. And that began a chase, really, which went on for 60 years or more, about was Orson really my father? And it was encouraged in a way by him.
Oh.
Well, that's the tricky thing. When he was in the theater blocking the lights for King Lear, he said, he let me watch all the rehearsals of King Lear. And then he said, come and watch as we put it in the theater. And I was sitting in the dark, and he had another actor say the lines so he could look at the lighting. And he was walking in the row behind me, and I had my arm across the next chair. And he stood behind me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he squeezed it affectionately. And we'd only met a few days before. Then, a couple of years later, he asked me to be in his production of the Henry IV plays.
Five Kings.
Yeah, of the Five Kings, called Chimes at Midnight, which is what his version was called. And we were, okay, so we're rehearsing in London. He gives me a very big cigar every morning at the beginning of rehearsal. He talks to me, and I, again, only met him a few years earlier in New York. And then he goes to the director, Hilton Edwards, who he'd first worked with at the Gate Theatre in Dublin. This is in London. And he says, I have a terrible toothache. And Hilton says, oh, my dear boy, you must go to a dentist. And Orson did go to a dentist, but his dentist was in Rome. And we didn't see him again until the day before we were going to do the run through, which was the day before we were going to open Chimes at Midnight in Belfast on the first stage of a tour. And because he hadn't been at rehearsal at all, he didn't know that I had been blocked to run from the wings with a sword in front of me as though to kill Falstaff, which was what he was playing. And it's about 2 a.m. in Belfast, and we've barely got through the first act. And I hear my cue, and I come running on from the wings with my sword out, saying, aye! And he hadn't learned his lines, and so was walking, had been downstage. He turned to walk upstage with his face in the text. And because he hadn't been at rehearsal, he didn't know someone was going to come out of the wings with a sword. Of course, I didn't stick him with the sword, but we were close. We were close. So then he walks on a little bit and he says, okay, hold it. Hold it. And you could do his voice much better than I could, since you're the man of many voices. And he said, I don't care when the stage manager is out in the house not paying any attention to the music cues. And I don't care when none of the lighting effects work. But when Michael Lindsay-Hogg tries to kill me at 2 a.m. in Belfast in the north of Ireland, I quit. And he walked off stage in what you might call a huff. And you have a friend who's Brent Huff, but it wasn't that huff. And I was shattered, of course, because this is the person who used to give me big cigars. And how could he throw this bunch of shit on me as though everything is my fault that's going on? Michael McLeamore, the other founder of the Gate Theatre in Dublin, was watching the rehearsal because they wanted him to take over the part of the King Henry IV, because the actor Reginald Jarman, who was playing King Henry IV, wore a hearing aid under his wig. And because if they didn't put his bed under the right position of the grid, he'd pick up a local radio station on his hearing aid.
Like Mae West.
Like Mae West, but yes, Mae West. And so then Michael McLeamore was going to play the part, but he didn't. So he comes on stage and he puts his arm around me and he says, don't you bother about that. Orson only did it because he knew you'd understand. He didn't mean it. He said, you know, sometimes when we don't know our lines, we get nervous. Or sometimes at 2 a.m, if we haven't eaten for a few hours, we get hungry. And Orson really wanted to just go off stage for a while because the hotel we were staying in had sent a roast chicken over with a bottle of red wine. So Michael McLeamore said, Orson knew you could take it and it wouldn't bother you because you knew you didn't mean it. And so then at 3 in the morning, when rehearsal started again, I put a funny makeup on, and Orson laughed and winked at me. So there was a kind of relationship which was out of the ordinary. So that's the signals he gave me, plus which he asked me then to come and work with him in London when the run in Dublin was over on another play, Ionesco's Rhinoceros. He was going to direct Laurence Olivier, and he asked me to come and be his assistant. This was in 1959, 1960 in Ireland. And he said, I'm going to London tomorrow, and I'll call you in a few days and tell you to come over. I said, great, fantastic, really looking forward to it. That was 1960. I didn't hear from him again till 1965, when I got a call when I was directing my first drama in English television, and you'd pick up a phone saying, hello, call from Michael Lindsay-Hogg. And it was Orson's assistant, Mrs. Rogers. Hello, Mrs. Rogers. How are you? She said, I'm fine, thank you. She said, I'm calling from Mr. Wells. And he wondered if you're free tonight to join him and Marlene Dietrich for dinner. And I couldn't do it because I was rehearsing my first drama, and we went till 10 o'clock at night. And I said, well, I could come at 10:30 or 11. She said, no, unfortunately, Ms. Dietrich has an early flight to Paris in the morning. So I got these clues, like he wanted to be involved with me in some way, but they were occasional. Then when my Beatles movie came out, Let It Be, I was lying in bed, reading the reviews or looking at an interview. Phone rings, and it's Orson, who I hadn't heard from for 3 years. And he says, I just wanted to wish you luck with your movie. And he said, what was it like working with him? And I said, they gained great fame very young, and that affected them. And then I realized, of course, I was talking to someone who'd gained great fame very young in radio broadcasts, and then Citizen Kane, which you know as well as I do, he directed me as 26. Which is sort of how old the Beatles were when I were working with them. Wow. So and then there was in the phone call, there was a silent moment, and I was thinking of saying to him, are you my father? And there's I didn't say it. And there's a long silence as though he wanted to say something to me. One of those longer than normal silences, but he didn't. And then the story goes on, and so that's the setup for the 60-year search and the mystery. And you can ask me other questions if you want, but I pretty much thought I'd gone through it all. My mother wasn't always accurate. That's a nice way of putting it. I loved her very much, but she wasn't always accurate.
She was Irish. That's part of the charm.
It is part of
the lack of accuracy.
The lack, and yes, and many wonderful stories to make up for the lack of accuracy. She'd got Alzheimer's, and so I said to her one day when I thought she still had enough gray matter left. Like I said, I loved her very much, and so I said to her, okay, tell me who my father is. Is it Orson Welles or Edward Lindsay-Hogg? And she said, it's Orson Welles, of course. You even look like him. So I said, oh, I'm so glad you told me. And then she said, Edward Lindsay-Hogg is the father of Michael Lindsay-Hogg. And then I said, so who's my father? And then she said, I told you. And she said, I'm going to tell you something else. I know who my father is, she said. I said, yeah, okay. It was my grandfather. And I said, who's your father? And she said, you are my father. So it was a long and winding road, someone else told me that my mother had, someone I knew very well, that my mother had confessed to her that Orson really was my father. And the end of the story is it is a great mystery that goes through the book. Thank you for see, only because of you, who I've known for almost 50 years. I don't really talk about this very much, but since you know me and you know, so I still this person swore to me. My mother told her, or it was my father. Uh, I'm still not sure, but it's a great book. It's a
Yes,
great book. It's a great book.
have you done the audible version of it yet?
No, no, I haven't. But I would see. I don't have a voice like you do.
Yes, but you have your own voice and it's your story.
I know now.
I'm not saying like, excuse me, thank you very much for the compliment, but you also have a wonderful voice. And
Yes, but not like
you know, your
not with
mother
the
was
actor's resonance.
your mother was so kind to me through the years, and I was living in New York about 25 years ago, I guess, 79th and Madison, and there was a coffee shop, and I was in there one day, and I said, "Oh my God, it's Geraldine," and I hadn't seen her for a few years, and I went over and said, "Geraldine, it's Charles Dennis." I said, "How's Michael?" He died. And
Well,
her caregiver was next to her. She went, "She's talking about her husband." And I realized,
yes, whose name was Stuart.
I know. I said, he wasn't Michael, but then she was married to you. I don't see.
You never told me that before. Yes,
No,
yeah.
no. It's well. That's what I love doing this. First of all, I do this because of people like you who I haven't seen for a few years. It's the only way I can get to visit face to face.
Right.
This phone thing, who is it? What's he doing? But no, now I see you, and it's great. No, I realize I hadn't told you that. Sometimes I'm too empathetic, you know. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but I mean, why? It's a lovely story,
It's a lovely story, and I don't think you can be too empathetic,
Yeah.
especially in the world we live in now. I mean, I think empathy is like gold standard.
Speaking of the world we live in now, I didn't know until I was looking up some stuff that you had done For Love Alone, which was the Ivanka Trump story. But it really isn't the Ivanka Trump story, isn't it? Because all the names were changed.
Ha! If yeah, I was going to do a movie in Africa, and I want to do it a lot, and I'd half written the script, and it had animals in it too. I wasn't so much interested in animals; I was interested in the relationship between the people. And at the last moment, Lisa and I were going to Africa, and we got our shots, and we pretty much were at the airport when the movie fell through. So, and one of the things the producers had said to me is they'd pay my hotel bill at the Chateau Marmont, and they didn't. And so I suddenly found myself with a potential big hole in my pocket. And so I said to Lisa, when the next script comes in, read it and just tell me what it's about. And I'm not sick. I just have
You're just in love.
okay. So she said it's from a novel by Ivana Trump. Um, and she said it's about her being a Czech skiing champion. I mean, she might have been, I didn't know. Anyway, I said, I have to do it. And so I then, out of courtesy, I go to meet her with the producer. It's written. It's for Hallmark. It's for Robert Helmy, and the producer called Michael Gallant. And so we go to Trump Tower, and we go up to the 58th floor, and a maid lets us into a room as big as a stadium. And all of the furniture is draped in white silk, and is of enormous proportion. You can edit that out. And it makes you think you're in Riyadh or somewhere in Saudi Arabia. It looks exactly like being in Saudi Arabia or one of those African countries. And she is sitting on a kind of large poof covered in silk, and I'm sitting way opposite her. And we have to talk quite loud because we're away from each other. And so she says, I'm going to do it. And I said, were you really a Czech skiing champion? She said, oh, yes, of course I was a Czech skiing champion. Anyway, we did it. We shot it in Canada. So I did. I mean,
So Stephen Collins was supposed to be Trump?
yeah.
Ah.
Stephen was supposed to be Trump. And Stephen, who came up to have a rather checkered history as time went on, didn't want to play the brutality which Ivana Trump had written in the book of the man she was married to, who had a false name in the book. Yeah. It was a fiction. And so Stephen wanted to play Donald Trump as a nice guy. And so when he was shouting at his wife and dragging her around the floor, he wanted to be seen to be a nice guy. And so the producer and I asked Stephen to come and have a chat with us. And we said, it's a very interesting marriage between these two people. There's obviously a great connection and stuff like that, but he's pretty mean. And Stephen said, I don't want to play mean characters. And then we said, well, we may have to think about this. He'd already shot, a week or so. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, you probably do. But he said, we have a 4-week schedule. You've already shot a week. I know how much these things cost. Do you really want to recast and shoot with another actor? And I thought, boy, that guy's been around. And so
wow.
He was very I liked him, I liked him. I didn't know about the the stuff about the little girls. But anyway, and then what was interesting is the woman who played Ivana Trump had been the front desk receptionist at the Chateau Marmont.
Oh.
A Danish girl. And I knew she wanted to act. And I thought it'd be really great. She's a very nice girl and very beautiful. What those Nordic women look like. And so I kept putting her up for auditions and she kept getting recalled and recalled and recalled. And she got the part. I mean, I just put her in the loop. But so therefore, the Ivana Trump was played by the receptionist from the front desk of the Chateau Marmont.
And she'd never acted before?
She'd been to acting class, but no, she'd never acted before. She was good. It just goes to show.
When I first met you, you talked about this script that you'd written, which you always referred to as the hotel movie.
Yeah.
And for years and years and years, you got to set it up. And finally, it got made as the object of beauty. And with John Malkovich, who I gather was not a walk in the park.
No, and Andy McDowell, who was more of a walk in the park. No, John we didn't get on, but we do now. But he'd just come off the Bertolucci movie, Sheltering Sky, and he'd got, I think, jaundice in Africa. and we did some screen tests, just for makeup and stuff. And so I went to him the next morning and said, "Are your eyes usually yellow?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The whites of your eyes are yellow." And he said, "Well, I haven't been feeling well." Anyway, he had jaundice, low grade hepatitis,
Yeah.
and he lost a lot of weight, which was good. But there's a funny sequence in the movie when he walks down a corridor weighing 180 pounds, puts his hand on the on the door, pushes it, and then enters the room weighing 160 pounds. So you notice like making movies. You make more movies than anybody I know.
You're not I think Cranston said I'm the only person in Hollywood making movies. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, thank God it lived long enough for these little, this magic device that I shot, my last feature film on. It's great.
But how do you get, I mean, you see, the other thing is you corral such interesting people to be in your movies. Richard Benjamin.
Well, I got Ross, Richard was always the one who got away. I got the whole family in that.
Yeah, you got the whole
I
family.
had Paula, I had Ross, and Sister Prentice. Yeah, but Ed Asner was always turned up. He was great.
Right, right. Now, did Cranston do a movie or is he just your
Yes, he
friend?
did that first feature in Vegas. We flew him to Vegas, and he was the police detective. He was great.
Where did you find him to be your friend?
I was going with an actress named Maria O'Brien, whose
Hmm.
dad was also a Mercury Theater man once upon a time, Edmund O'Brien.
Of course.
And it was her birthday, and she was shooting an episode of Jake and the Fat Man in Hawaii. So I flew out to spend her birthday with her, and Brian was in the episode, and we hit it off. And it's amazing, with all he has stayed, Brian.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I text him, he gets back to me within 24 hours.
Did he still have very red hair when you first met him?
No, not red. Was he like a carrot top when you worked with
No,
him?
not a carrot top, but more like a marmalade top.
Ah, yeah, yeah. It was that kind of yes, yes. Listen, I
Yeah.
want to. We're going to extend because I love talking
No,
to you.
we can do another one.
You
I
want to
have to,
bail? You want to bail now?
no, you ask me one more question.
Okay. You have been referred to as the father of the music video, and as I'm trying to get a younger crowd here, tell us about some of those. I mean, I've got the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Neil Young, Elton John, Wings. I mean, you shot them all in a
And
format.
the Beatles too. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I I got lucky. I mean, I always wanted to get lucky. Um, when I was through a series of events, when I was 24, I was directing in London, in England, on television, a TV rock and roll show. It was on the air for an hour every Friday called Ready, Steady, Go. And because it was that time in music history, England was the focus of the world because the Beatles came out of England, as did the Rolling Stones, as did the Who, as did the Kings, as did so and so. I mean, I don't know if you're particularly a rock and roll guy, but so these were people that were on my show. And the other advantage I had was that we were all the same age. I'm 3 years older than Mick Jagger. I'm the same age as John Lennon would have been. Um, and I really liked the music. The difference between me and the other directors who did that show and similar shows were they were in their 40s, and some of them had been in World War II. And the difference between the World War II generation and our generation was very big, to do with attitude, even to do with how short or long your hair was.
Yeah.
And there were no videos because there was nowhere to show them. There was no MTV. This was, 15 years before MTV. And only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had enough power, clout, to say to the television companies, take a video or you don't get us. Partly videos were made so it meant they didn't have to go to plug a song to Belgium, to Paris, to Italy, and be in the local television shows. And partly because, particularly those two groups, since they had a lot of say in how their records sounded, they also wanted to say in how they were presented. So I did. The Beatles had never done a video before, and because they liked Ready City Go, they saw the show. They liked the way I shot it. They asked me to do videos for Paperback Writer and Rain. And then 2 years later, they asked me to do the video for Hey Jude, which was a very big song. And it was a very, very successful video. And then the Rolling Stones asked me to do their Jumping Jack Flash. And then I did the Rolling Stones for 15 years, all their videos. Wow. Yeah, but I was lucky, I loved the music. And also I thought the music was very important. It was the music, rock and roll was like the banner that all the young people were carrying into their battles. Right. Yeah, and I had a very good relationship with Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel. I did their concert in the park in '81. I did Paul Simon in Africa in 1988 with his wonderful album Graceland. Yeah, so I was very lucky. I loved the music. Somehow fate had me picked out to do that. And so that's what I did. You can find clips of my Stones videos on YouTube. Pretty much all the Stones stuff is mine. You can find Hey Jude on YouTube. And I know you're going to look them up right now.
As soon as I get off.
Okay.
Well, I was very lucky to finally get you.
Okay, listen, we've been friends for so long. We can do this again.
Yes, no, absolutely.
If this show gets your ratings up, then we'll go to part 2.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today has been Michael Lindsay-Hogg, or Lord Michael Lindsay-Hogg, if you will.
Sir.
A whole other. Oh, sir, not Lord.
Not Lord. Okay, sir.
All right.
Give my love to Ulrika, will you?
I will. If you like the show, click like, subscribe.
I'm going to click like, but I'm also going to click goodbye.
Goodbye.